Let's piggyback to the energy space, where the African Export-Import Bank, or AfrExim, is putting millions of US dollars into financing that will ensure African natural resources are used to develop the continent's economies. Last Tuesday, I sat down with a panel of 5 experts to discuss Africa's energy transition and financing, as well as how to navigate the pathway towards providing available and competitively priced energy on the continent. The discourse was at the just concluded Intra-Africa Trade Fair for 2023, held in Cairo, Egypt.
In Africa, this year has been quite eventful because we reached 2 milestones. The first, as mentioned, was construction of a new oil refinery in Angola, which is the second largest oil producer on the continent. Yet they really depend on imports of refined products from places like Europe. So our project is trying to, help that situation and give them a step forward in becoming self-sufficient in refined products specifically. So we have a 3-stage project. First stage is a 30,000 barrel per day capacity. Second stage will be doubling that, and the third stage we're going to be adding a reformer to produce gasoline. About half of the production will go into the local market in Angola, and the other half will be exported to generate still hard currency income for the country. And we're using US technology for all of this. So we've taken the lead and put in our own equity for the last year and a half. And then about 3 months ago, we had a financial close on the project loan, which was put together thanks to our friends at AfrExim Bank, who made it possible for us, alongside other African DFIs. Maybe a quick note here that this was entirely financed through, on the debt side, through African DFIs, because we've had no support from elsewhere in the world. So London-based equity and African debt financing is made it possible. With respect to renewables, and again, thanks for mentioning that, we've bought a stake in the largest wind farm in all of Africa, which is based in Kenya, Lake Turkana, which has arguably the best wind resource in the entire world, and it's an operating asset. But the idea is to put more megawatts in place at the same site to take more of that natural resource that Kenya is endowed with, and really grow that. At the moment, it's producing almost 20% of the country's electricity. And it's going to be, with the expansion, hopefully, the country will come even closer to being a 100% renewable country.
Owando has always been a company that has looked into the future, several decades, and designed its strategy based on not just the local ecosystem, i.e. Nigeria, we're talking about the African continent. We started off as a downstream company, almost 30 years ago, delivering fuel oil to vessels and rig sites, and also importing a significant amount of petroleum products into the country. At some point, we actually imported close to 25% of the major marketers' association production locally into the refined petroleum system for the country. Now, when we realized that the story of Africa was not going to be complete without industrialization, we then moved into the midstream sector, where we piped about 280 kilometers, just under 300 kilometers of physical gas pipelines across Nigeria, taking gas from stranded areas largely to industry. This facilitated a significant increase in the profitabilities of these companies, because hitherto they had used diesel, effectively, low pool fuel, right? And not only did they see almost a 40 to 60% savings in their fueling cost, they also obviously benefited, and we all benefit from the emission reductions. About 10 years ago, we ventured into the upstream services and then upstream exploration phase. So Bosun, when you say what we've been doing over the last 30 years, it's been a busy time for us. We are one of the largest producers of crude out of Nigeria and natural gas. In this business, we also support the largest and black start power station for the country. There are only 2 in Nigeria. We actually feed gas to one of them, and we own a 20% stake in that joint venture. So we power the country from from a gas perspective. Now, I want to speak very briefly about the renewable ambition. We developed Owando Clean Energy as a response to what, again, we see is going to be Africa's journey over the next, we see 3 decades. The 2060 or 2050 target for most African countries still has 55% of that energy basket as gas. We will move from a 90% currently to 55, and that 40% odd movement will be taken up by renewable energies. But to achieve that, Africa needs $80 trillion. Half our governments can't pay their civil service. So the fundamental point here is that context of that conversation needs to shift. There are certain truths. We believe that the energy transition for Africa must be Africa-centric. It must understand that gas and oil will take our people out of darkness, and I think that's the first thing. I don't think you can embark on anything in the future if you can't see, right? So we need to get out of darkness. We have to educate our people. The standards of prosperity need to improve, and largely if you provide energy, whether it's electricity or indeed any other form of energy that allows for logistics and all the eco-development type activities to function, creates prosperity. So we've got to do that. That is our responsibility.
The challenges that we face today on the continent, particularly in the energy sector, are multiple. First of all, a lot of the international banks have moved away from financing not only oil and gas, but the energy requirements of a continent where more than 900 people go every day without electricity. From all sorts of reasons, the heavy cost of compliance to the discussion around climate change. So the firepower actually is not there to meet the $80 trillion of requirements to fund the industry. So the banks have gone. All the private equity money sitting in Western Europe, in London, doesn't also come to this sector. You see sectors like fintech are attracting more money than investments in oil and gas or in energy requirements, which is critical to the industrialization of the continent. If we even put together all the 700 banks that are in Africa, commercial banks, their firepower also is extremely limited. My friend Leston is there. He can open an LC in Malawi to import 30,000 KT of gasoline to power schools or hospitals. So we have severe challenges in supporting, whether it's basic trade flow from a continent where we are net importers of product, to actually fueling our industrialization, whether it's developing upstream oil and gas projects or helping with logistics around pipelines, infrastructures, rehabilitation of refineries or building new refineries, or simply maintaining existing infrastructure around the energy value chain. So the challenges are very, very significant. And we have been working extensively with our partners, development financial institutions, commercial banks, and corporations like GEMCO or even Owando, Sahara, to put in place structures to try to mitigate or solve this. These are various forms of various different kinds of structures we put in place to actually meet these requirements. But this is not sufficient. Celine was telling you that we just built a refinery in Angola, but Angola's refining requirements are 200,000 barrels a day. And what the target we're actually looking at for Angola is 450,000 barrels a day. That should be able to serve not only Angola, but the neighboring countries of Zambia, Namibia, DRC, which is quite a large market, so that we move away from exporting our crude and we actually improve refining capacity at home and report. So there's a long way to go. Somebody said, how many more Afrexim banks do we need on the continent to be able to meet this challenge? That is why, in addition to what the bank is doing with its partners, the management of the bank and working on the sidelines with the African Producers Petroleum Organization, APO, which is an 18-member state of African producing oil companies, have decided to create another multilateral agency which is going to be focused on financing the energy requirements of the African and Caribbean people. So we are in the final stages of getting all the approvals. It is going to be an organization set up by treaty, the same way Africa Exim Bank will be. It will have 3 classes of shareholders. The first class of shareholders will be all the African producing countries, national oil companies. Class B and C would be African investors and international investors from all walks of life. The projected share capital of this company will be $5 billion. And we hope that we will go through the process of ratifying these establishment agreements and the charter and do the fundraising to commence operations by June 2024.
To go back to the theme of African solutions to African problems, yes, we can look east and yes, we can look west, but Africa has significant amount of resources, financial resourcing, funding that we can leverage on. The challenge is we work in streams. Genesis would have a stream, this DFI has a stream, AFDB has a stream, Afreximbank has a stream. If we aggregate, if you think about crowdfunding from a DFI perspective, if you think about crowdfunding from a private equity perspective, if we come together and join those streams, then we're a powerful force to ensure that we are funding projects in Africa. Some of the things, and it's important to also mention the great work Afreximbank has done. They've just introduced or announced the PAP system, and we believe that is going to significantly improve intra-Africa trading, particularly even intra-African funding. And finally, I think what we really want to consider is a dual currency continent.